Sure.
Now, Shashi, it's wild how it's claimed that Britain gave India democracy. A New York Times piece, it basically quoted a NATO diplomat saying that it took Britain 250 years to build democracy in India. This was later retracted after a lot of public outrage.
I can imagine.
But do you think that such myths and lies really shaped the perception of how Indian democracy is seen globally?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is the British denied democracy to India. And it's something that is slightly absurd to suggest that a colonial power whose business is that of control, oppression, extraction, and loot is actually going to be busy giving democracy to the people it's busy exploiting. I mean, these are people who not only used their structures of governance for their own benefit, but structured everything in order to ensure the others were kept down. That is, Indians were kept down. The racism, explicitly part of the system, literally signs saying Indians and dogs not allowed, clubs in which Indians were never given membership, the residential segregation, the so-called civil lines where the whites lived and the black town where the Indians lived, the ways in which the administrative structure was so completely skewed, all authority in the hands of white people, all the subservience on the part of Browns to come as supplicants, please sir, can I have this, can I do that? You know that they actually had to be, for an Indian to sit down in front of an Englishman, he had to have a particular certificate given to very few exalted Indians. They had a permission to sit in a chair in front of an Englishman. I've seen these permissions. They existed right up to the 1920s and 30s. This is the kind of system the British had. They were no interest in being democracy. On the contrary, it was a denial of democracy at every stage. You are talking about a system that existed solely for the benefit of Britain and not in any way, shape or form intended to give democracy to India. Because of the demands for it, grudgingly limited amounts were conceded. And it was conceded as much for appearance's sake as for substance. The substance was never real. For example, when Queen Victoria's proclamation declared that Indians would be admitted into the Indian civil service, it was explicitly minuted we'd never give Indians any real role. We'd select very few of them and we'd give them minor positions in the districts where they would be interacting with other Indians and they would not get in our way or exercise any real control. That was explicit. In fact, Lord Lytton wrote to Queen Victoria saying so. So you've got a system where even the appearance was only appearance, it was not real. Not only at the Indian civil service level, but when there were three famous, quote-unquote, reform movements. There was the Minto-Mori reforms of 1909, the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms of 1919, and the Government of India Act of 1935. Each of these was supposed to be milestones in granting Indians more self-governance. In practice, they were used to divide Indians, communal representation, separate electorates, we talked about that, Muslims and Hindus. But on top of that, they were also designed to give Indians no real power over anything the British cared about. At no stage, right up to independence, Indians control law and order. Law and order, police, home affairs, intelligence, always in the hands of the white Brits, right? The things you were given, things like education, and that too, small level education with very minimal budgets. As late as 1930, the American historian Will Durant, visiting India, was shocked to discover that the entire education budget of the entire British Empire in India for 330 million people was less than the high school budget of the state of New York. Okay, with God knows 10 million people. It was just the whole exercise of the British was not about benefiting Indians in any shape or form or even genuinely preparing them for self-governance. So it is outrageous to suggest that the British have any reason to applaud themselves that India is a democracy at the end of 250 years, 200 years of colonial oppression.